皆様、konnichiwa. Welcome to Virtual Almighty, Virtual Shrine Visit. Now before the short simplified Shinto ceremony is the Shubat, the preliminary purification. Mazu, Shubat. お礼を受けいただきます。払い言葉、訴状の願をご提答ください。Please bow slightly. 天魔がもがしこきざなみのおかみつぐしないもがなだちわなのどんなわぎはらにそぎはらいたまいしどきにあれませんなあらえどの神たちもろもろのまがごと罪けがれあらむおばはらえたまえきゃめたまえどまおすごとを我しめせとがしこみしこみももすお祈りをください Thank you. Please straighten. This is called haregushi. Its meaning is to sweep aside obscuring vibration to purify. Will everyone please bow slightly for a moment and receive o harai? Orai itashimasu. Onori o kudasai. Thank you. Please straighten. 最終一杯の儀. Now to begin this ceremony, will everyone please follow me and bow once deeply? Thank you, please straight. Norito Sojo. Now is the Shinto prayer. Norito Sojo no gan wo go teito kudasai. Please bow slightly. Om wata kamman no hara wa te ashishiwa shihara no nagatsu kunni wa ga gaya ga shitamwa jimina kunno ya hayari o gamidachi hanagara daimyo jin Ukannami tamano kami oke tamasada bikono kami yabe omya hime no mikoto inare sanza o hajime aidana ni wai matsuru Onni no toko tachi no mikoto Ami no mura komo goke sammu hara yo Hayatake muson no kami Amatsu kami kunizu kami Yaho yorozu Kyo yorada na kami kami no toto kimi tama wo Hakwa ga myoyama ye Kema komo ga she koke Shimi no hoi nari me songon nagara chikyu jinja no main ni Iwa inuchi Kannada jinja, kannuchi, yoru, tsudajimya yama ye gashi komi momo saku tsuneni mo kami rachi no hiruke azu kimi dama no yoko imori matsuru Living in the faith sanctuary no Rachel Jones hajime Living in the faith sanctuary Moro tomo ito bito hajime やそが言われども、令和6年、貧のへ達年、三백이木税中、ひさらぎ二日、今日のいぐいのられろらびさらみて、あらえたまえ、きょめたまえ、めごみたまえ、さきあえたまえ、てらしたまえ、守り導けたまえ、すがすがしくぞこにゃかみことよことあらしめたまえと、しこみえがしこみももす。うじゃれは神社仏教天上無休名誉入所分の入人がじゃなく、国津神稲荷三座大名人、あらえたまえ、きょめたまえ、めごみたまえ、さきあえたまえ、まもに導けたまえ。おぐざのたなつものごこく上中せさといぶことなし。祈るところ、願うところ、守り、さっきあえたまええなきみたましんとかじ。お祈りをください。Thank you. Please straighten. ちないけらもなみなおかみなみたまなうやだだたいおろがまおいなるみたまのうやなみかりとごしゃのかみなりおろがむ限りなき御霊の幸の働きとご眷属神旦によろがむ生ききて御霊の幸を身に向けてこの世の幸に働きまつるよらんなる祈りの心澄み渡り神の御国に参りのもらいThis is another type of harai. Please bow slightly for just a moment. Oh, come here, come here. Angon, jingon, ikon, datinai, tamae, kyonere, tammo. Igoto, yogoto, kega, yamatsu, kata, naku, jinji, no, danni, karara, sukoya, kanni, shite, kazon, kuichiro. すらすらしっこわらしめたまえあらいたまえきょめだまいまもはれさきあえたまえとかしこみがじこみもはうお祈りをください。Thank you, please straighten. Saishui Pain Nogi. Now to close the ceremony, let's again make one deep bow to Kami-sama. Please follow me and bow once deeply. Thank you. Please straighten. Thank you so very much to participate in this virtual ceremony. Now let's chat. So that was the simplified Shinto ceremony. Do you have any questions about it? So the first one was a harai gushi. Harai gushi means a wand of purification. So that's this one right over here. So basically, it's often incorrectly said that Shinto begins and ends with harai. So the which means purification. And there are three basic forms of purification, but main thing is that it's not the idea that we are really kitanai, that we are really dirty or need to be purified. It's more like the idea that human beings originally, like everything else, are part of divine nature. And so
are perfect and perfectly following divine nature. But human beings in particular seem to be pretty goofy. So things come up, our own actions of others, wacky things that kind of keep us apart from the force and flow, the force and flow of divine nature itself. So when we look around the world, and of course you're in a lovely place, Vancouver. So when you look around, you see everything flourishing at the time it should be flourishing. You know, now is the season of setsubun, which means the beginning of spring. So even though it's still kind of a winter time, underneath the ground, everything is getting ready to come forth. Life is getting ready to come forth. That's the meaning of setsubun, by the way. But so everything is following its nature and true to its nature. Except human beings can be so goofy, so we need harai. So we need to purify the various obstructions that either we generate or absorb, that keeps us apart from the joy and vitality and the knowing of being in connection with and following the force and flow of divine nature. So the meaning of that harai gushi is to clean, to harai, to purify, to sweep away obscuring vibrations. Interestingly enough, that one is made out of asa. It's made out of hemp. So that hemp is a very sacred in Shinto. So that's that particular ritual object. The next ritual object that you mentioned was at the closing of the ceremony, there was the purification via the small bell. And the small bell is called suzu. And that particular mixture of 3, 5, 7 bells on a central mast is called gokito suzu. So there's the types of suzu that is generally used inside the shrine is there's kagura suzu and gokto suzu. And the gokto suzu is used by the Shinto priest to purify. And so the kind of model is harai kyome, purify and invigorate. So first we remove obstructions and then we can receive a fresh ki. So kind of, we can't continuously inhale, we have to exhale old thing and then we can receive new thing. So renewal is very important. So first one is a wave aside, obscuring vibration. Then we are ready to address kami-sama on everybody's behalf. So after the first part of the ceremony, which was the shubatsu, the preliminary purification, there's a purify the ritual objects that are used in the shrine and everybody in attendance. Then once we are purified, then we are kind of addressing the divine world on behalf of everybody. The next part of the ritual was the norito, or the Shinto prayer. And basically, it's there are many types of norito. And they're the kind of flow of a norito. First of all, they're in really old language. They're in what's called Nihon no Yamato Kotoba, kind of original Japanese language, kind of Japanese language as was spoken around the Heian Jidai, around the year 700. So it's kind of equivalent to Old English or something of that nature. So it's for modern Japanese, it's kind of strange, old, archaic language and words. In any case, the nature of the ceremony was very honorifically describing first who was being addressed. So that's the enshrined kami-sama here. So who was being addressed, who is speaking, that's a me, and then upon whose behalf. And then after mentioning on whose behalf, then is the what is the essence of the message. And the essence of the message was to pray for everybody to be purified and invigorated and to live their best life in accordance with their life mission. So that was the meaning of the ceremony. And the drum the drum song then is called Oharai no Taiko, and it's a kind of a song that's meant to be a gift to Kami-sama. There's no real direct translation into English for the word kami-sama. Basically, it's a kind of a divine beings or the essence of Shinto thinking is that nature itself is divine. And that nature itself is divine, the force and flow of nature is divine, the various actions of nature are divine. And And the essence of the various particular types of that divinity are called kami-sama. So there's all kinds of kami-sama, great and small. For instance, there are many kami-sama of the Big Bang, of the creation of the universe. Then there's kami-sama of the creation of the solar system. Then there's kami-sama of the planets and the sun. Then there's kami-sama of places and the various kinds of morphogenic fields. So the kami-sama that are enshrined here are, for instance, this is Inari Sanza. The main kami-sama here are the Inari Sanza. Inari Sanza is a three main kami-sama that makes up Inari worship. Those three kami-sama are Ugami Tama no Kami, Saruraiko kami-sama, and Ame no Zumi no Mikoto. So those three kami-sama are kami-sama of vitality and a generative life essence, and then kami-sama of guidance, and then kami-sama of harmony and arts. And so those kami-sama together form the essence of Inari and also the essence of Kanagara kami. And so then there are other miscellaneous kami as well. And but those are the main ones that I was addressing. The setsubun literally means season division. So in fact, there are 4 setsubun during the year. But when you say setsubun, setsubun has come to mean February 3rd. So for everyone, it's really the beginning of spring. It's really this huge season division. Up until the modern era, setsubun, which is according to the old solar calendar, before the modern era in Japan, an old calendar, Kyureki, was followed. And the setsubun was essentially New Year's. Was the opening of the year, and it still remains the astrological opening of the year, although people generally don't know that. Japanese people generally don't know that. It's kind of obscure knowledge, you know. So one way we can view it is that on the Gregorian New Year's, January 1st, which is of course a huge thing in Japanese culture, it's kind of the space between January 1st and February 3rd is kind of all New Year's season. It's kind of astrologically, it's the cusp between the various influences of the previous year and the year that's coming into being. And then now that we're reaching setsubun, that means that that process is completed and we have fully entered the new year. Mame maki. Mame maki means to throw soybeans. And so probably for most people in Japan, kind of thinking of a setsubun is it's a kind of fun time to scatter soybeans. You go outside your house. Usually families are throwing soybeans at dad who's wearing an oni mask, and they're yelling oni wa soto, ka, ka, and then throwing soybeans towards the house, saying fuku wa uchi, fuku wa uchi. Oni wa soto means a kind of demon out, or this kind of oni is a kind of a demon. Interestingly enough, oni were only associated with setsubun from around the year 700. Before that, it just really meant a kind of negative influence. So it's kind of evil, misfortune. So basically, the reality of setsubun is the ki equinox. So there are many stages of ki, but when we think of and ki is like chi or vital essence energy kind of stuff. And the two most basic cases are after the creation of the universe, there was the Big Bang, and things then started to, so everything came into being an infinitesimally small dot, and then things started to expand, and there was a just energy. There was just energy. There was before gravity, before light, before heat, before anything. It was just undifferentiated energy. Then at some point, things began to separate, kind of like a parfait or a Guinness. so things that are light are beginning to rise up, and things that are heavy are beginning to settle. And so those are the two basic stages of energy. So there's ki rising and ki congealing. And setsubun, the real meaning of setsubun is the ki equinox. It's considered to be literally the ki pivot point between the season of the winter season, when things are in the process of closing down and congealing, and then just like and then like seeds are underground and germinating, but life is not apparent. It's all really withdrawn and underground. And then when the key switches and it bursts forth. And so the exact equinox is setsubun. And so that has real meaning because these pivot points have real special power, special efficacy. That's why, for instance, important people, your group is an interfaith group, and they have various spiritual practices that they use to enrich their lives and to feel more connection to a divine world. And so those practices, all those various practices, have a particular efficacy at morning and night. And the reason is because those are pivot points. During the day, our conscious mind is really very active and our subconscious is less active. And at nighttime, the conscious mind slows down, and the subconscious mind really rises, and then subconscious mind is really a big thing at nighttime. So, and then that switches at morning and night. And so that's why these pivot points. Of course, the pivot points, we can more easily affect balance. We can affect change by applying a little bit of pressure or a little bit of key intent at pivot points. And so that's the particular efficacy of the setsubun, meaning of setsubun. I've been the teacher of Aikido for some time, for about 55 years. And my original interest was that even as a child, again, I felt very strongly that things in nature were true to their nature, and that even each blade of grass and each leaf was completely correct, completely true to its nature. And to me, as a child, human beings seemed really goofy and not true to their nature. So I was really kind of searching for a way to feel more clearly, perceive more clearly the force and flow of nature, and to be able to harmonize with it and flow with it. So as a youngster, I was an avid surfer. It's a kind of natural wave kind of thing. In any case, I started training in Aikido in the late 60s. And as a way to understand nature, and to my actual ideation was really to be grounded and to really be able to understand nature and understand energy well. And so I worked on that and was doing various daily trainings and meditations and things of that nature. And Aikido is essentially a kind of like a Shinto yoga. It's a kind of a manifestation of in the same way that Tai Chi Chuan could be said to manifest Taoist philosophy. And you can do Tai Chi without being interested in Tao. But if you delve very deeply into the Tai Chi realm, I imagine you'll come to Tao. And the same thing is true if you really do a deep dive into Aiki, you're going to get to the paradigm, which is Shinto. And so I became quite avid in the early 70s about kind of researching that paradigm. And of course, this was long before the internet, so trying to learn things was very different in years past than it is now. In any case, I was studying various things and visited many shrines, and eventually I was invited to a really special shrine in Japan, and went there and really felt that the particular vibration and the way things were conducted there was really what I had been searching for my entire life. And so I started studying that with the quite intently, traveling multiple times during the year and staying for a few weeks at a time and studying, just as without ever thinking I would become the Shinto priest. And because it was impossible, of course, to become the Shinto priest. I thought what the Shinto priests were doing was so cool that I looked into becoming Shinto priest, and I understood that it was impossible, that in the thousands of years of history of Jinja Shinto, there had been no non-Japanese Shinto priests. So I thought, well, that was okay. I was very, very busy to continue to train and teach in the Aikido. So I wanted to share more of the essence of Shinto as I was receiving it. I wanted to share that with the people that I was training with. So I was avidly studying. And at some point, a very, very senior Shinto priest felt that I should have a license and asked me if I would be willing to receive one. And so that's how that came about. This funny hat is called tate eboshi. Eboshi, tate means vertical and eboshi means hat. And it's made of urushi, it's made of lacquer. Shozoku is a generic name for the clothing of a Shinto priest. So shozoku basically was basically the attire for nobles during the Heian Jidai. So around the year 700, that period. At that time, this kind of clothing, this particular garment is called karigino, and a karigino was relatively casual clothing for a court noble at that period. And so shozoku as it is as today comes from that period, and hence the hat. I believe practice is important. That the idea that you find some minimum practice that you do every day, no matter what. That's really, really important, in my opinion. That's something that I decided probably before 1970. I was training a lot, and then some days I would train extra a lot or really have great experiences, and other days maybe I would train and not really be able to tap into the wonderful energy that I wanted. And so I found myself at that time kind of in a bargaining process. If I didn't train much one day, I would make some kind of bargain, well, I'll train extra lot tomorrow or something like that. And when I found myself doing that, I was really disgusted as a kind of bargaining, kind of being a spiritual merchant. So I thought, well, I'll just make day to avoid that process. It occurred to me that if I just trained every day, then I wouldn't have to decide, and I wouldn't have to bargain, which felt so cheesy. So to avoid that process, if you just decide on a daily practice and do it, by the time you're done bargaining, whether you'll do it that day or not, you could be finished with the practice. And so I think some kind of practice that has physiological element, because we have manifested into the body, and there's good points and bad points about that, but there must be some gift to it, or we wouldn't have gone to all the trouble, because it's really a lot of trouble. So some kind of physiological element, some kind of training that is really tuning us, some kind of training where we following whatever type of spirituality that we're attracted to, some kind of training that is meant to increase our ability to be present and to develop what I call the listening body, the ability to perceive and respond to the voice, the whisper, the pulse of nature itself. Because nature is speaking, it's not at all silent. And we just have to make quiet in a little bit our wacky chatter, and so then we can better hear and respond to and receive information of how to follow the whisper of divine nature. So some kind of physiological breathing meditation or something of that nature, or 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 chanting. Singing is good because we're using our voice. Voice is good because again, you're fusing your voice is really important. Kokyu is how you communicate with the world around you. It's very important. So that sort of thing I think must be good.